Hi everybody, this is going to be my second video demonstrating steno, and as you can see I've got an NPR broadcast up on the computer, and the reason why I selected this is it was kind of an interesting article. It was written in April 21st, 2014, and it's about medical transcription. It doesn't make any mention of stenography, but you'll see how it relates when you hear it. And as you can see, I got my machine set up. I've done some practice runs, so that's why it's up and running. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate me transcribing via Microsoft Word. And I'm going to have to switch back and forth pretty quick, so I might miss the first couple of words, just FYI. But yeah, let's get started here. So I'm ready. Just set right here. Propped behind my laundry detergent thing. Hopefully you can see it fair enough. Oh, that's right, I gotta start the file first. Ready, set, go.
History. Scribes were the literate people in society, the ones who held all the knowledge. Modern scribes are now playing a similar role in many doctors' offices. Lauren Silverman of member station KERA reports.
Dr. Devish Ramnath used to see his patients alone. Now he's always with Connie Gaitan. Think of Connie as a court reporter in the doctor's office. She's Ramnath's scribe, and sort of like his shadow. As the doctor examines the patient's neck, she sits quietly in the corner, typing notes and speaking into a handheld microphone connected to her laptop.
She states she is feeling much better than before. Follow up as needed.
Just a few months ago, Ramnath switched from paper to electronic medical records, which meant he no longer just had to take notes, he had to also put them into a computer as a permanent record.
I was really just focused on trying to get the information in and not really focusing on the patient anymore. Also, I was spending probably an additional 2 to 3 hours after every clinic just trying to get my medical records done.
Now, a scribe does all the electronic note-taking while the patient is in the office, saving Ramnath hours every day.
I would more than happily sacrifice a significant chunk of my income for the improved quality of life that I have.
Plus, with Gaitan, he gets a scribe who can also translate Spanish. Scribes are in high demand across the U.S. The country's first scribe staffing company, called Physicist, is on the second expansion of its Fort Worth headquarters and opened another office in Chicago.
It's been about a 46 to 50% growth rate every year for several years.
Alex Jesbray is CEO. He says in 2008, the company had 35 scribes in hospitals. Today, 1,400. The other big scribing companies have thousands more scribes each. The company Physicist trains scribes from across the country every week in its Fort Worth mock emergency department. Seriously, it's a replica ER with TVs anchored to the wall and sliding blue privacy curtains.
And let's try clicking positive on respiratory distress.
This morning, an instructor is going over the right way to fill out an electronic medical record. There are thousands of record systems, and scribes need to be able to put in the right billing code and medical terminology at lightning speed.
Probably the biggest skill that I've learned being a scribe is how to not just multitask, but to listen to multiple things at the same time.
Brandon Torres started scribing a few years ago and now works as a trainer.
You're listening to the physician, you're listening to the nurse, you're listening to the patient, and any overhead pages that might occur, and you're gathering all of that information and presenting it back to the physician for him.
And that's crucial. The physician has to approve the notes of a scribe because ultimately the doctor is responsible for the record. A scribe makes just $8 to $16 an hour. Many of them are medical students who say it is an invaluable experience. But is it helping patients?
This is not an area that's received a lot of research attention.
Ann O'Malley is a physician with Mathematica Policy Research in Washington, D.C.
One study of scribes that was done in the emergency department in New Jersey found scribes were associated with more patients being seen on average per doctor, and so that clearly results in more money coming into the institution.
But that same study found the amount of time a patient spent in the emergency department didn't decrease. And while most patients are fine with having an extra person in the exam room, there are concerns about privacy and training standards.
On the flip side, scribes could be viewed as physicians recognizing that they can't do everything, and there has to be some delegation and teamwork in care regardless of the setting.
The physician-scribe collaboration is also fueled by a deadline. Any doctor who doesn't make the switch from paper to electronic records by 2015 will face Medicare reimbursement penalties. For NPR News, I'm Lauren Silverman in Dallas.
And that's your health for this Monday morning.
In nearly every state now, visually impaired people can drive with the help of what are called bioptic telescopes. Now, these are tiny devices that drivers wear in addition to their glasses. At the University of Alabama, Birmingham, there is a special training program where drivers are learning to use the telescopes. And that's where Dan Carson of member station WBHM met one young man who's leading a fuller life because of this technology.
24-year-old Dustin Jones merges a small white SUV onto the interstate. He's clean-cut and wears a light blue polo shirt. There's a 3-inch black box attached to the frame of his metal-rimmed glasses.
Unless you've been without it, you don't understand how crucial it is.
Jones has a genetic condition that reduces long-distance vision, so he couldn't drive safely without this little device called a bioptic telescope.
Life without the ability to drive is exponentially harder. It's just very difficult to do anything at all.
Everything was harder, growing up in a rural area with limited public transportation. His mom has the same condition.
We relied a lot on family or friends just for simple things like groceries.
6 years ago, Jones entered a University of Alabama at Birmingham program that trains people to drive with bioptic telescopes. His teacher was Jennifer Elgin.
You're fitted for the bioptic, and then you go through some training just for general mobility. So walking around, using it as a passenger in a car. Once we feel pretty good about the passenger part, then we move on to driving.
A year later, Jones was trained and certified so he could take the Alabama driver's test. He passed on the first try. He started commuting by car to an IT job and eventually landed his current higher-paying IT job at a children's hospital. Jones says without his bioptic telescope,
I wouldn't be a productive member of society. I could potentially just be a forgotten soul.
It's also easier to pick up a girl for a date. He's a little shy on that subject, but Jennifer Elgin jokes about something else some new drivers notice when they start driving with these telescopes.
A lot of times with new drivers, especially young men, we'll be stopped at a stop sign and I'll watch them and they'll be looking at the girls walking across the crosswalk. And I'll look over and I'll say, I know what you're doing.
But this doesn't come cheap. Bioptic telescopes can cost more than $2,000, depending on the model. State rehab programs sometimes pay for them. Insurance generally won't. Jones' grandmother paid for his. As he drives, every few seconds Jones subtly dips his head and glances through the eye hole of the scope. His bioptic magnifies objects like signs and traffic lights 4 times. At the University of Alabama at Birmingham, in addition to training drivers, specialists have done some of the first road test studies on people with bioptic telescopes. UAB's Cynthia Owsley co-authored a recent study of 23 bioptic users showing the vast majority drove safely.
As the evidence comes out on the research side, more and more jurisdictions are willing to entertain the possibility of bioptic driving.
And that would give even more people opportunities like the ones given to Dustin Jones, who still sees driving as a privilege.
I didn't feel entitled to drive, having not driven my entire life. I felt that the opportunity itself was gift enough.
According to one estimate, about 10,000 visually impaired people in the U.S. now drive with bioptic telescopes, and the number is growing as more people learn about the technology. Until cars drive themselves, these tiny telescopes will be out there helping people do what many take for granted. For NPR News, I'm Dan Carson in Birmingham.
Well, that was a little bit extra that I didn't intend to do exactly, except that when you're on the machine, you kind of just gotta go. And but I hope that clarified a few things at least. One thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is, you might notice on one of my here we are. Right about here, we've got these what are called easy speaker ones, and those are those kind of these preset commands that you use on your steno machine to identify the speakers. As you can see, I really failed to identify the speakers. It's really hard to multitask in that sense. Hopefully I'll get better at over time, but I wanted to at least illustrate what you can do you can replace what's in the brackets with a name to put into what who's speaking, such as the NPR, who's the person on NPR doing the commentary. Perhaps also you can illustrate one of the doctors that was talking in the broadcast. Or also, one thing you can also probably do is maybe you can just maybe have a command for maybe the background noise, to illustrate, the fax machine running or whatever it was in the background of that article. So, the last thing I would like to also illustrate with this demonstration is the dictionaries that you can create with this software. And I won't go into too much detail about that, but just so you know that there is this option which is essential because you want to identify what's not in the original Steno dictionary that you have to load when you first are given this software. And that is because there are going to be plenty of untranslatables that you have to input for yourself. Examples commonly used are things like proper names that are not commonly associated in the English language, such as, if you get maybe you're doing a topic about a family from a foreign country that just immigrated here, or whatnot. You need to input all these different names. You also have some things like names that are often conflicted, and what that means is, for example, steel and steel. How do you identify those particular words with each other? That's preloaded into the dictionary. There's different methodologies for that. But maybe that there's a, I don't know, maybe someone's last name that has an H in it. Sometimes you might have to identify that. And to do that, of course, you might need to input that into your dictionary as well. And you do that with within the transcript you have specific kinds of commands that won't go into because this is not a crash course for this particular software, or else I would I'd be robbing a few teachers of their job. But yeah, I hope that clarified a few things with the transcription trade. Hopefully I'll be able to create a part 3 with this, and of course, if you have any questions, just hit me up via my blog. Hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory how to do that. I think I've also got my email address on board, so feel free to give me any questions, and I hope to hear from you. Thanks.